I was around 16 when this thing happened, maybe a little younger. I honestly don't remember the exact age because so much time has passed since then, but it still comes back to me sometimes, like when I'm trying to fall asleep or when I hear a certain sound outside the house at night. Back then, I was living with my parents in a small town. It wasn't one of those places where everybody knew each other, but it also wasn't a city either. So you kind of got used to long stretches of quiet, and when something unusual happened, you really noticed it. My parents both worked long hours, and they trusted me to be at the house alone in the evenings because I was the type of kid who never really got into trouble. I just played video games or did homework. Nothing exciting. It was a Friday night. I still remember because I had no school the next day, and I was in my room on the first floor sitting at my desk with my old desktop computer, playing some game I was addicted to at the time. I had my headphones on, but not too loud, so I could still hear if someone rang the doorbell or something. At some point, right around 9 maybe, the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it was my neighbor because he sometimes came over to ask my dad for tools. But then I realized my dad wasn't even home. So why would he knock at this hour? I went to the door and I asked, "Who is it?" Because that's what my parents always taught me. Never open without asking. The voice that came back was soft, kind of shaky, almost like an old lady's voice, and she said something like, "Could you help me, please?" I couldn't hear it all that well through the door, so I unlocked the first lock and peeked through the little gap. I saw this older woman standing there, smiling at me. She had gray hair, but it was messy. Not like how my grandmother's hair always looked. It was sticking out in little strands, and she had her hands behind her back. She was smiling in a way that didn't really reach her eyes. She asked me if she could come inside to use the phone. She said she was lost and needed to call her son, but right away something felt off. I can't really explain it, but the way she was standing there, so calm, smiling at me like she already knew me, just didn't feel right. I told her politely that I couldn't let anyone in when my parents weren't home, and I suggested maybe she go to the gas station down the road because they had a payphone. She didn't argue at first. She just stood there smiling, but then she said, "It's rude to turn away someone asking for help." The way she said it made my stomach twist. I didn't know how to answer, so I just repeated that my parents didn't allow me to let strangers inside. I slowly closed the door while saying sorry, and she didn't move. She just kept staring with that same smile. I walked back to my room, feeling guilty but also nervous, because something about her presence just didn't make sense. Maybe 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't answer. I just froze in my chair. And then maybe 2 or 3 minutes after that, I heard tapping on my window. My window was right next to my desk where I was sitting, and the blinds were down, but the tapping was sharp, like metal hitting glass. At first, I thought maybe it was a tree branch, but there were no trees right outside that window. The tapping went on, steady, like whoever was doing it wanted me to come look. I turned off my monitor and just sat in the dark, listening. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my ears. I didn't want to lift the blinds because I already had this awful feeling I knew who would be there. I got up and went to the living room and just sat there in the dark for a while, thinking maybe it was all in my head. The doorbell rang again. This time it rang 3 or 4 times quickly, like someone pressing it over and over. I was done at this point. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't have my own cell phone yet, and my parents weren't answering the house phone whenever I tried to reach them. I thought maybe it would stop if I just waited. Not long after, there was another knock at the door, but when I looked out the small side window, it wasn't the old woman this time. It was a man. He looked younger, maybe mid-20s. He had short dark hair and he was wearing a baseball cap. He said through the glass, "Have you seen my mother? She's old, and she wanders off sometimes." I didn't open the door. I just told him yes. She came by earlier. He smiled and said thank you, but then he asked if he could come in for just a minute. He said he wanted to check the house in case she was inside. That made no sense to me because I literally told him I hadn't let her in. I said, "No, I can't let you in," but I told him maybe she went into the backyard because I heard some noises near my window. He nodded, thanked me again, and walked down the path, like he was heading to the back of the house. I waited by the kitchen window to see if he'd actually go back there, but after a few minutes of watching, I didn't see him at all. It was like he disappeared. That night, I ended up turning off all the lights and locking myself in my bedroom. I tried to distract myself with the TV, but maybe an hour later the tapping started again on the glass. This time I couldn't ignore it. I pulled the blinds up just a tiny bit, just enough to see outside, and I swear I almost screamed when I saw her face right there, inches away, smiling at me. Only this time she wasn't empty-handed. She was holding a knife and lightly tapping it on the window. I dropped the blind right away and just crawled back into my bed. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. I just lay there with the blanket pulled over me, shaking. Not long after that, the doorbell rang again, over and over, like 4 or 5 times in a row. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just waited. Eventually, the sounds stopped. By morning, there was no sign of anyone outside. No footprints I could see, no broken windows, nothing. When I told my dad later, he said I did the right thing by not opening the door, and maybe it was just some people messing around. But the way he said it, I could tell even he didn't really believe it. The more I think back on it, the more I'm convinced they weren't just random strangers. They were working together, and they were trying to get inside that house. If I had opened the door even once, I don't think I'd be sitting here telling this story now.